Yeah. Okay. Anyway, we're here. Let me just check. We do have an audience. Yes, we do. Okay. And okay, so recording in 3, 2, 1 for now. Okay. Let's see. We started out with last time. Just these are kind of recall poetry O Sensei composed. So okay, no matter how much we praise it, it cannot be fully explained. The Samuhara path of Aikido in the establishment of Odo no kamuwaza. Okay, so apparently O-sensei liked to talk in terms of code words. Okay. And no matter how much we praise it, it cannot be fully explained. Okay, so the code words, Samuhara, Odo no kamuwaza. The explanations are good, but then again, you can get trapped in the process of explaining something. Okay. And praise for it means that it's something of immense value, right? Why else would you praise it? But it cannot be fully explained, you know, the way that Ano Sensei explained something, because I asked him about something. And he just said, Oh, Sensei left it as homework. Okay. So the term Samuhara and Odo no kamuwaza. All right. Now, I asked Mary Heine Sensei what, you know, because, you know, you hear this and you oftentimes go, oh, you know. And so I asked her once, Odo no kamuwaza. And she said, oh, Odo is this mystical river that Izanagi, after he was sort of kicked out of the underworld, the Ninokuni by Izanami, because Izanami just decided to explore death, go descend into the deeper, darker realms. And she told Izanagi, don't follow me. But then again, Izanagi, of course, did. And so she was so upset at him, she sicked all these really powerful, I'm sure from Izunagi's standpoint, nasty energies that chased him through realm after realm. And so, according to O-sensei, I've never really heard this explanation anywhere else. When he reemerges, he's so shaken that he sort of lost his godhood. And so he winds up finding this river. And the way that Mary Heine Sensei explained it was, is the movements he did in the river is Odo no kamuwaza, misogi. Not just misogi. Misogi is kind of like, okay, cleansing. But again, all right, here we are potentially, you know, just like Izanagi. We, or each individual soul spirits, Sensei says things like everybody has the universe inside them. Okay. But we get compressed and we get sort of contracted and we get sort of mesmerized by what in the Don Juan books is called ordinary reality. And what happens there is that there's this train of thoughts, this internal dialogue that really keeps us here. And so the Odo no kamuwaza are things we can do, like Izanagi did to. See, for me, the Odo no kamuwaza doesn't necessarily mean the actual movements, but it's more that he went and he sort of, and I think Sensei mentions that you have to soak in that river. You have to soak. And one of the things that is said here is that no matter how much we praise it, it cannot be fully explained. In other words, whatever was there is a direct experience. Okay, now the question is, where is, the river Odo? One of the explanations, not in this book, but it's in a prior one, translated by John Stevens. The essence of Aikido is that Odo, O-D-O is Romanized from the Japanese, is also a reading of Oto, O-D-O, which is sound. So Sensei was very much kind of into what he would call the vibrational nature of everything. And so the Kototama, right? So that's probably something else. It can't be fully explained. Knowledge, apart from being, can take you towards that. But knowledge and being oftentimes are separate somewhat. So the act, for example, of taking we're here in this interior dialogue, all of a sudden knowledge here may put us in a direction. But it's up to us to, take the. And Samuhara might represent on some level right here the true design of creation in the universe. Well, Sensei talks about a harmony, he talked about a perfection, that everything was tied to and based and came through love. And there's the grosser reality of everything here and how we support it with our interior dialogue. So finding that river, soaking in that river. And just as Izanagi was chased through these various dimensions, and basically, I guess what he did is he came out more like us. Okay, but you have to find that river. And, exercises. But, there's something about exercising. As you're moving, you're soaking, which is, I would say, the importance of the misogi. And what happens as we kind of are chased through those dimensions to get to here, just like Izanagi was, we wind up, our senses become contaminated. And that contamination is supported through the interior dialogue. So and so there may be a variety of different, I'll mark this out because we want to go through it again. So sometimes you play games like there's this river. This river, obviously, I'm thinking about the river, trying to imagine the river, but there was a river. And, we say exercises, movements, but we get so busy here off of this that maybe we should just soak for a bit. Now here, for example, if you check here, we're feeling kind of the right and the left of the current. And the current can obviously go that way, or it can go that way. And I kind of notice, for example, certain things like as I kind of begin to soak, my breathing settles. And I have a lot of life experiences, which, to some degree define me. But on the other hand, we get caught up in this dialogue. So we're soaking in this river. Things come up. Like, for example, the word calm comes up. The river may have different currents and be in motion. I'm soaking in that river. There's a calm that starts to kind of, so it's a word, I can understand it, I can begin to feel it a bit, but to actually soak is different. Now, for example, here, following the motion of the body as I'm soaking, outer experience, even though it's experiences beginning to be internal. Well, through that, there's this point. Now, this point exists whether I'm kind of more in the dialogue of what Don Juan calls ordinary reality or in a finer space. This point will always be there. And there will always be that sense as I go finer, just soaking here maybe takes me, okay, there's the, and then finer states or dimensions. And the finer states or dimensions, they bring up words like calm came up. Clear. For example, the hand starts to move a certain way. In other words, it's calm, but there's an aliveness to it. It's clear, but there's a aliveness to that clarity. It's not, okay, yeah, I feel it. Yeah, okay, you're doing that, so I'm going to copy that. Or and I notice, for example, that those thoughts are still going on, but they're kind of a bit deeper. I begin to kind of pick up there's a more of an interior presence, which when I'm too caught up in what's out there, I start to dissociate from. But as I soak, notice the postures, straighten up, So the words like clear or calm are not just words. Remember, words can't explain it. It's a feel experience. I'm doing some movement now. So Mary Heine Sensei said it's the movements that Izanagi did in the river, but I'm too getting caught up in this here and out there that for me, I have to soak a bit. I know things like the point, whether, if I don't get it, even when I'm in all that confusion, there's this point. But as I start to soak, the breathing gets finer, goes towards what I call more breath. You're still breathing in and out, but breath is a different sense. Silence is a word that comes out. But actually begin to hear the silence as opposed to it's a word. Yeah, I need more silence. And from this particular place, we train in movement. But for example, I'm going to stand up, soaking here. You're coming from a different place. To stand up is easy, it's sort of supported. Conversely, if I'm going to sit down, that's supported in that direction. In this particular thing, motion can happen, but it's not confused out there motion. Image that comes to me is Sadaharu. Our sensei told him to learn to wait because he got too caught up in the confusion out there. Learn to wait, but not to wait for strike three. Boom. So movement itself, as we soak, shifts. A lot of people like the movement, right? But good, yeah. But if you learn to soak, the movement itself changes. Okay, I'm moving out there, and it could be very fun, but soaking in that river. So there's various qualities like calm or still or easy. You're easier. You're laid back, but boom, boom. You're pretty close to like being able to take focused action. Boom. So, for example, there's a difference. Okay, we'll just do a simple thing. Okay, we're in class, just a bunch of people looking forward to training. That's good. But okay, so warm-ups. But it's going to take a second or two and sort of say, Sensei's advice to Sadaharu always learn to wait. Maybe if he were right here, Sensei would tell all of us, learn to soak. Yeah, the question is, mind ever says soak in what? Let's just say that we'll use our imagination to imagine, feel that river. So some soaking down here. Notice my sense of ground. Just like, okay, I'm grounded. I feel like ground's a part of me. It's a little different than, okay, I'm ready. As I kind of get that feeling that the ground is part of me. Yeah, there's movement in relation to that ground. But then again, I get caught up in this, and yeah, okay, there's a lot of things going on, great. Or conversely, we may be opening up pretty quick, but right now, in-person classes are all basically online or outdoors. So. But this is always going on, whether or not there's a pandemic or not. So there's motion. There's motion connected to out there as exercise. When you soak, maybe this becomes somewhat of what O-sensei called Odo no kamuwaza. For example, here, the hands are moving. It's like, rivers don't run this way, but there's a river going this way. Now there's also a river going that way. That can't exist in the physical realm. But maybe if this was a mystical river, and for example, I really want to, I can ride this part back, ride this part forward. I'm using the hands, but after a bit, you same feeling in your chest, your shoulders. If I feel like it, I'll change sides. So there's motion that comes out of the soaking. Soaking. Again, it's an idea, but on the other hand, as you soak, there are other, starts out as a lot of part of that interior dialogue, but starts to resonate a little fuller through you. So, for example, this is a common misogi exercise you do standing, but based on. Everything, for example, when I'm here, everything's kind of contracted, but here we're space is much more open. Right? And we can continue with this. Yeah, you may want to shift right, left, right. And every once in a while, I'm getting a little too busy there. Just go back to the soaking. I'm kind of still within the beat. Like this experience kind of has a beat. Oh, the beat can extend out for the physical motion, but that physical motion out and back, sort of based on this beat. And that beat can become finer or can expand out some more. various Aikido hinged positions are based on that. A beat wants to ascend, but it's ascending from itself. It doesn't jump out of itself. Likewise, that beat may go back into itself deeper, 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 deeper. See, so a lot of the movements of Aikido. Now we can kind of do this in a dance format, which is good. Almost like I can direct that river. That river's now got a new sort of outlet that direction. It's going to keep going for a while. On the other hand, we can create another outlet going that way. So what we're doing is exploring. What Sensei might have meant by soak. Soak. I notice, for example, my lower back is starting to loosen up a bit. Okay, now exercise, stretch that area, but it's part of this beat. It's almost like, okay, now we're soaking in that river. Okay, I'm soaking, but there's a pulse or beat to that river. It can speed up or it can expand, slow down. Or conversely, it can also appear to be very still. That may feed a pond or a lake, and boom, it's still. It's deep, you can soak there too. The river, because in a lot of ways, the river, well, Sensei talks about the number of changes. If you look at a river or a stream, the water goes through. River, river. Around the rocks. The changes, the transformation of that current. Kind of awakens within me a sense of wonder. Okay, let's get their exercise. That's good. Oh, let's socialize. That's good. But there's also, oh yeah. Oh. Now, for example, within that river, I just say, you get circular patterns. I could be doing this as a part of an exercise. This expansion, contraction, movement, form of stillness. I don't think everything's really still in that river, but and there's the river, and all these little subcurrents and the way the movement transforms. So you get unity, it's the river. Everything in that is the river. And division divides into an endless transformative experience. So you start to get Sensei's 8 powers, not just as words on paper or lecture, but if I check back to me, he or she who's in that river, mind feels less bound by my outer limitations and circumstances. Wow, got to deal with this. Yes, I do. But for this moment, it's almost like that river, there's a piece of what you might call eternity going on. Not immense, but there's a feeling of something that's a bit more infinite, not just I. Go back into I, go back to this dialogue. And soaking for a bit. There's that deeper, deeper experience of I going more towards self. So just a simple thing. I mean, I was thinking, since they told Sada Hadavo to wait, learn to wait, might tell us learn to soak. Learn to soak. Odo no kamuwaza. Then the samuhara, or true design of creation, as opposed to the world, that the frenetic world the eye creates, starts to come into focus a bit more. So when you read O Sensei, it's like, okay, I don't figure. So we can a sense of wonder. See, we're sort of like this. So let's just, not exactly sure. We got one or two more pings, so we have a couple more people. Any thing about learn to soak? Anybody? Cliff, do you have a comment or anything?
I haven't been doing all the soaking because I'm feeding my kids lunch, among other things.
Yeah.
So I've been kind of, going into the river, getting out of the river, going into the river, getting out of the river. I see the sense of the pulsing versus the stillness. And I had one thought, which is that, my blood and heartbeat have a pulse.
Yeah.
And the blood circulates, and I could see that being connected externally to like the key that's going on outside of me. And around me are other creatures that have different pulse rates and different, sort of eddies and currents, but it's all kind of like that George Harrison song, Within You, Without You.
Well, I mean, you have your arteries, you have your veins, you have your capillaries. In fact, Osensei talked a lot about blood. Boiling the blood this, the blood that. So, it's possible that your whole body, if you choose to expand your sense of it. In other words, the senses are contaminated, by this dialogue and the tight version of external ordinary reality we create, that as we start to soak, this starts to lift a bit. Yeah. So, circulation. Converse a little too drifty with it. Bonnie, do you have anything you might want to add, or don't have to?
Sure, Sensei. It took me a minute to turn on the microphone. I was experiencing, I believe, partial soak over here, but I was standing by sitting. For me, that what I felt was initially as though my body was balancing on the feet, using the soak of the water to help me find the right balance. And I noticed my arms would move slightly with the flow to almost slightly wobble around to find that place. Then I believe what may have been called drifting, I started drifting into different flows, and I noticed my body started kicking in old memories. So Aiki Taiso, so just basic circles, but it was as if the flow was the arms cutting through water. So if you swim, you like slice the water with your fingers, but it almost felt like the energy flowing through. So in and out of that state. And I'm going to stop talking to try to get back in it while you talk.
Yeah, well, there's a difference again. The way always since they put it, you can praise it, but words can't explain it. It's kind of that. You know, I mean, if you were to ask Sadhguru what waiting meant, he began to realize after a stretch of it, years of it, that waiting was the most active thing he did. I mean, you know, different ways. Okay, let's just say you're a baseball player and you're a little too out there, so you have a hitch in your swing. In those senses, just learn to wait. Might have, if he told Osan, you know, learn to soak, it might not have registered. Learn to wait. Learn to wait. Okay. And, you know, the other thing is as you soak, your balance goes through the different dimensions. So staying in the flow balance of a finer dimension, your joints work better. It's less like I gotta stand and it's an out, it's an interior self-command. So those are things that you kind of notice just as you know, the term is learn to soak. Okay. Let's go back. And yeah, it could be either. We were doing a little bit of this yesterday. Okay, I'm picking up the sword. There's something out there, and I'm gonna learn how to swing the sword. But we put all this soaking time in. And Cliff was talking about, you know, the heartbeat and the movement of blood. When I'm picking up the sword after I've done a pretty good soak, it's like my own body. There's some of my own pulse and some of my own circulation going into the sword. Now it's wood, I'm going to swing it. But when I start to pick up, once I've kind of, okay, this extension of me, I begin to realize it also kind of has its own vibe. Now, we haven't done anything with it. Notice my grip is neither clenched nor too loose. And if we're in that river, the sword oftentimes can be kind of like the help me navigate that river. We haven't done anything in terms of swing it. I can play games like hold with my left, remove the right, hold with my right, remove the left. And if I initially I go this way, there's the one, or I go this way. My left, my right are involved in that. And when they're holding both. Okay, so you can just sort of pick a sword or a staff or a spear up. What's it like after you've done a soak? Any Cliff, any observations on the sword? Done a soak, just we haven't really done anything with it yet, but how does it, does it feel?
I was running around getting my 5-year-old food and getting my 9-year-olds back into class. Sorry. I just got back.
All right. The challenge is a lot of ways that's going on. If you soaked, you can find that soak area kind of quicker. If you don't soak, I mean, it's like, you know, there's a point where in one of the books, so Sensei talks about his prayer time in the morning. And he says, if I don't do that, the rest of the day, it's not as good. And it's not that he needed that time, but it's a point where it's kind of soaking time. And, you know, there's all this activity, but yeah, if you've kind of had a good soak or used to soaking, then you go click. And it may not be perfect, but it's still there. So that's something to notice, okay?
I got
Bonnie,
some.
anything picking the sword up? Or Cliff, did you have anything to add? Or?
Yeah. So while you were talking just now, I was holding the sword, and it felt like it was parting the current, like the current was going on each side of the blade. And if I moved the sword, I tilted the sword, it kind of moved the current around it, right? The current.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. No, you know, a lot of movements, for example, you go this way, you're creating different currents. You're not, you know, you're part of the river, but you're also, all right. There's a great line in, I think, The African King, you know, Humphrey Bogart and Katharine Hepburn, and they're in this little putt-putt boat, right? And so Katharine Hepburn asked Humphrey Bogart, you know, there's the flow of the river. Why in the world do you need the engine? You can just go with the current. He says, yeah, you can. But in order to steer, you have to be, in other words, function within the river. You have to be traveling a little faster than the river's current in order to actually steer the boat. So it's a little bit like right here. Okay, I want to, like there, I'm tilting this way, or I'm tilting the blade this way. That creates a change in the current. If I go this way, it creates a change in the current. If I go this way, it creates a change in the current. Now, what's happening is that your senses, which are kind of like clogged, like mine, you know, but we start to soak, all of a sudden go, oh yeah. The current goes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. So yeah, that's a good observation. Okay, Bonnie, anything on from your standpoint about the soaking and just holding? Yeah.
Since I originally noticed when picking up the sword from the soaking that the sword felt lighter and more naturally in a grip with the body, without gripping too much. But then as I was holding the book and just went to stand and soak and kind of go with the flow, I noticed that there were different parts in my body that we're hitting snags with the flow. So the just waiting at those snags is a place where I feel like I need to be to get the flow to smooth out those jagged edges, if that makes any sense.
You kind of notice if you're soaking, you know, it goes both ways, you know, you may have a jagged edge or two. If you, one of the tricks of the trade, you know, as Nadeau Sensei likes it, is to play the percentages. You know, maybe you're in a pretty good place, 86% pretty well there, but 14% jagged. If you focus too much on the 14%, you get stuck. So you soak a bit more. Now all of a sudden, the jagged part's about 10 to 12%. So you focus on what's good. Even, you know, on a bad day, okay, there's going to be some 8 to 10% there. And if you focus on the bad day, you just, the senses stay clogged, but, you know, all of a sudden, okay. Oh, okay. Like I'm noticing as I hold it, you know, that there's a warmth in the wet, not just my own body heat. If it keeps on getting warmer, it starts to kind of feel more like a lightsaber. Okay, so, you know, on a finer dimension, boom, 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 boom. Where did George Lucas get the lightsaber from? Well, it's a sword archetype, albeit a very, you know, and putting it in the future. Yeah, all right. So those are just a couple of the tricks of the trade, so to speak. Okay. Now, for example, if we were to just go into the actual, see right here, all of a sudden I've been soaking, but I get caught up in, I'm swinging the sword. But he or she who is soaked there, let me check the breathing a little bit. How I'm holding, how do I want the sword to feel? I'm grabbing my own wrist. That's what I want. I'm holding a sword. No. A contact, me with me. Now, there's tendency, how do I do? From that more interior place. As the breathing gets free, not that I have to go, but breathing is freer. So, what I notice, for example, the closing motion, but Cliff was coming up with the heartbeat. The heart has to expand and contract to beat. Now you don't want to go and have a heart attack. Boom. Isn't natural. Beat to it. Yes, there's a focusing, but it, you know, it's not like that's the end. I got to do it again. No. Okay, so just swinging. More vital heartbeat. And I got to swing it faster, harder, but that's all. Okay, so just a couple of instances of, you know, picking it up. It's a little different after we've done a soaking. At least it is for me. Anybody with a observation, something to share, question? Cliff, anything come up for you?
Yeah, I'm trying to put it into words. When
Yeah.
I was swinging the sword and I had the closing motion, it was like the sword was a prow of a ship and I was the ship. Like I was trying to have the sword, be the extension of myself, and it's parting the current. So maybe it's like the boat that the African Queen that Humphrey Bogart and Katharine Hepburn were going down the river in. But it felt, I think, a little more less like I was swinging a sword and gravity was pulling on everything and I'm kind of having to hold it up, which on the physics plane is literally true. But it felt more like it was buoyant and, I was extending it forward, I guess.
Okay. Well, most of the time we go out to focus.
Yeah, I tried to keep focusing on my center point, like we've been talking about in recent classes, but I can still feel it going out forward from that.
Yeah, for example, this closing motion. Just beat to it. Now, if I go this way, it kind of seizes up. But if I just sort of drift with it, metaphor I get, the river is our own life force. River powers this. A little ring, middle, index finger, boom. But it's like, it's almost like the beat of it is not so much here, but it's at this point, boom, boom. I mean, there's a certain area where, what are we going to do next? But you got a good rhythm flow with a good soaking. This is kind of cool. You really get into your own heartbeat and go, yeah, it's kind of a miracle. Okay, boom, boom. Again, level of self. Boom. Boom. Trusting motion with a spirit. Boom, 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 boom. Almost anything comes off of a beat or a pulse. We got a couple of minutes. Yeah. Yeah. So if we were, for example, here, boom. Again, water going through, a stream, rocks, boom, 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 boom. It's the endless transformation. Boom, 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 boom. So it's just starting to kind of boom, boom, go through it. Boom, they get different pulses, beats. Oh. I go back to here. It's less like I'm holding it. And we're part of the beat, the pulse of that river. And off of that, boom, boom, we can movements themselves kind of like boom, 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 boom. And when I change the angle of the spear point, it creates different waves or currents. But check. Still, there's that river still going on. Feel a little bit more part of that river. Now the currents can, depending on the configuration, speed up, slow down. So when that shows up in. This is different than picking it up and doing the usual. So prayer time, soak time, oh, don't know, kamuwaza time. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, yeah. I'm not sure I can find it, but that section in here where, let me see. Yeah. Yes. I'll see if I can find the exact quote for next time. But if you've got this book, it really talks about, Izanagi having to find that river and soak. So and there wasn't any, it's like mudras, whatever, the different currents that you can create in that river. The river is a river. Things like Tai Chi, for example, are really good to get a feel. In fact, Robert Frager Sensei, one time he handed me a pamphlet. He was right. I don't think the book ever got written. It was actually a collaborative effort between Robert Netto and Robert Frager about Aikido and energy. But how Tai Chi oftentimes was, in the old days, was referred to as river boxing. And you can learn the forms. But there's that extra step. Okay. Anybody with anything they want to add or anything to this? So, we'll call this the kind of the class on learning to soak. You can take O-sensei's words, for example, read them, think about them, maybe even be inspired by them, but there's that other step where you soak. And I think that's what he did. He spoke in such terms that, what did he mean? Da, 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 da. Oh, I don't understand that. soak. Anybody?
Yeah, when you were
Yeah.
swinging, I think it was the staff, and you were talking about the blood.
Yeah.
I happened to glance over at the bookcase and saw this book. I don't know if you can see, by Michael Moorcock, Blood, A Southern Fantasy. And I'm like, oh yeah, Mike gets it.
Well, you know,
Just by
the whole thing,
coincidence.
yeah. But with Stormbringer, right? You know, I mean, you know, it was a point where he gets the sword and he's facing an army. And then there's that song that the blade starts to sing. And, you know, it's almost like he's Elric, even though he had physical problems, was a really top swordsman. But when he's holding that sword and that sword is singing that song, they form a dance. Okay. And Osensei, you know, said, you know, it's that all this important stuff, but don't neglect the importance of the underworld. Okay. And one of the things is that, you know, we're right here. And it seems like a lot of times that underworld is sending us all this stuff, but it may be sending us that stuff so we find the river. And sometimes things get so whatever that we got to find that river and just sort of soak for a bit. So I guess that's what we were working on in this, you know, the Odo no kamuwaza. And Samuhara, you know, the true design of creation, not necessarily what creation becomes when the senses get clogged. And, you know, Izanagi being chased by these dark forces through these different dimensions where he finally comes out and he's like, basically, his senses are so clogged, he's not a god anymore. So he has to find that river and soak. And I sort of get the feeling that Osensei with this morning prayer time was his Odo no kamuwaza, not just praying, but soaking. So that's just that. So anybody else? Bonnie, do you have anything to add before we go?
Sorry, I got distracted by a squirrel, Sensei. One last thing to add.
Sure.
When you first mentioned soak and you stuck your arms out, an image that came to mind was from Mulan, where she's carrying the two things of water, where she's going to climb up the mountain. And so holding two pails of water from the arms and being in a relaxed position with the shoulders,
Okay.
enough to walk relaxed with a lot of weight up the mountain. That was an image that came to mind of a finer, relaxed point that I knew the body's capable of getting to. So,
Well, see, Osensei probably meant that the Odo no Kam, you know, the actual river. Anytime you get more balance here, you're going towards that. So, you know, I gotta carry a couple, but you find your center. That's kind of a mini soak. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, I agree with you right there. Anyway, I think we're gonna go. So thank you for tuning in today. Let's see, we'll be here Wednesday, you know, Friday. We're still doing the Tai Chi club meeting right now for the Thursday nights. Okay, we're taking a little break because we need to figure out more of a schedule of opening things up. So trying to keep the Monday nights free. So there's not a new Tai Chi class, but we'll be doing the club meetings on Thursday. Okay, well, thank you all.